The Lost Generation, 1883 to 1900. The Lost Generation, the original rebels without a cause, grew up in a world that went from horse-drawn carriages to machine guns almost overnight. These folks were thrown into the chaos of World War I, where their introduction to adulthood involved dodging bullets and mustard gas. Imagine being barely 18 and already a veteran of trench warfare, where every day felt like a grim game of survival. By the time the war ended, they were disillusioned with the old world order, which had promised glory but delivered nothing but misery and mud. With a cynical worldview, they gave us timeless works like Hemingway's The Sun Also Rises and Fitzgerald's The Great Gatsby, capturing their sense of alienation. These were the folks who would meet for drinks at Parisian cafes, swapping stories of lost innocence and shattered dreams, setting the stage for modernist literature. Think of them as the original hipsters, minus the skinny jeans and lattes, but with all the existential angst. The Greatest Generation, 1901 to 1927. Enter the Greatest Generation, who didn't just grow up tough, they defined tough. Born into a world recovering from World War I, their childhoods were marked by the Great Depression, where luxury meant having a second pair of shoes. Imagine being a kid in the 30s, seeing your parents struggle to make ends meet, and then, just as things start to look up, getting drafted into World War II. These folks didn't just fight the war, they won it. They stormed beaches, liberated countries, and came home to rebuild the world. If the Lost Generation were the disillusioned artists, the Greatest Generation were the hands-on doers. They built highways, launched the space race, and gave us rock and roll. And let's not forget their sense of style. These were the men and women who made fedoras and pin-up curls iconic. So, if you're enjoying the perks of modern society, thank the Greatest Generation. They're the ones who made it happen. The Silent Generation, 1928 to 1945. The Silent Generation didn't earn their name by being boring. They were just really good at keeping their heads down. Born during the Great Depression and World War II, these folks knew the value of hard work and quiet perseverance. Picture them as the kids who never missed a day of school, did their chores without complaining, and grew up with a sense of duty ingrained in their DNA. They came of age during the 1950s, a time when conformity was king, and standing out was often discouraged. But don't let their low profile fool you. They were quietly shaping the future. These were the people who laid the groundwork for the civil rights movement, bought the first suburban homes, and created the early TV shows that still influence media today. They were also the first generation to truly embrace the idea of the nuclear family, with 2.5 kids, a dog, and a white picket fence. So while they might not have been as loud as the boomers or as rebellious as Gen X, the Silent Generation was the steady, reliable backbone of modern society, kind of like the dependable car that just keeps running no matter what. Baby boomers, 1946 to 1964. Ah, the baby boomers, the generation that practically invented the modern teenager. Born in the post-war baby boom, these folks grew up in a time of unprecedented prosperity. Picture a world where every family had a car, a television, and a fridge stocked with Jell-O molds and TV dinners. Boomers were the first generation to grow up with rock and roll, with Elvis shaking his hips and the Beatles causing hysteria wherever they went. They also witnessed the civil rights movement, the Vietnam War, and the moon landing. If the Greatest Generation built the modern world, boomers were the ones who moved in, redecorated, and threw a party. They challenged authority with protests and sit-ins, but eventually became the very authority they once rebelled against. As adults, they drove the economic boom of the 80s and 90s, embraced consumer culture, and collected all the avocado-colored appliances their hearts desired. Love them or not, boomers have left an indelible mark on culture, politics, and economics, all while figuring out how to set the clock on the VCR. Generation X, 1965 to 1980. Generation X, the original latchkey kids, grew up with a healthy dose of skepticism and a knack for independence. If boomers were the optimistic idealists, Gen Xers were the pragmatic realists, watching their parents' marriages crumble while they learned to microwave their own dinners. Picture a kid coming home from school, flipping on MTV and seeing Madonna push boundaries, or Kurt Cobain lamenting the state of the world. This was the generation that grew up on grunge, hip-hop, and the early internet, navigating a world where the rules seemed to change every day. They saw the end of the Cold War, the rise of the personal computer, and the explosion of alternative culture. Gen Xers are often described as the forgotten generation, but don't be fooled. They were quietly shaping the digital revolution, questioning authority, and challenging traditional work structures. If you've ever enjoyed the flexibility of working from home, thank a Gen Xer. They were the ones who first started questioning the whole live to work mentality. They might be the middle child of generations, but like any good middle child, they're the glue holding it all together. Millennials, 1981 to 1996. Millennials, the generation that grew up with dial-up internet and watched it evolve into a world where everything is just a click away. Imagine being a kid in the 90s, navigating a world of Beanie Babies, Tamagotchis, and early video games. Millennials were the first to embrace social media, turning platforms like MySpace, Facebook, and later Instagram into cultural phenomena. They were also the generation that bore the brunt of the Great Recession, entering the job market just as the economy tanked, leaving many saddled with student debt and few job prospects. But don't let that fool you. Millennials are nothing if not adaptable. They pioneered the gig economy, turned side hustles into careers, and prioritized experiences over possessions. They're also the generation that brought avocado toast to brunch menus everywhere, much to the chagrin of those who blame them for killing everything from department stores to napkins. Love them or roll your eyes at them, millennials have redefined what it means to be young, connected, and socially conscious in the 21st century. Generation Z, 1997 to 2012. Generation Z, the true digital natives, grew up with smartphones in their hands and Wi-Fi in their cribs. Picture a toddler swiping through a tablet like it's second nature because for them, it is. Gen Z has never known a world without Google, social media, or memes. They're the most diverse and socially conscious generation yet, and they're not afraid to make their voices heard. Climate change? They're on it. Social justice? They're leading the charge. Mental health? They're breaking down the stigma. But they're not just about activism. They're also incredibly entrepreneurial, with many starting businesses or side hustles before they even graduate high school. They're the generation that turned TikTok into a cultural juggernaut, where 15-second videos can spark global trends. They might be young, but don't underestimate them. Gen Z is reshaping everything from how we work to how we communicate, and they're doing it all with a sense of urgency and creativity that's hard to match. Generation Alpha, 2013 onwards. Generation Alpha is still in their early years, but they're already showing signs of being the most tech-savvy generation yet. These kids are growing up in a world where AI assistants know their favorite songs, and virtual reality is just another way to play. Imagine a toddler using voice commands to control their toys, or learning to code before they can even write in cursive, assuming they'll even need cursive. As the children of millennials, they're being raised with an emphasis on technology, education, and global awareness. They're expected to be even more diverse, more connected, and more adaptable than their predecessors. But let's not forget, they're still kids. Whether they're playing with the latest augmented reality games or asking Alexa to tell them a joke, Generation Alpha is poised to be the most innovative, imaginative, and forward-thinking generation yet. If you have any thoughts about this video or ideas for the next one, share them in the comments below.